My name is Nadia. I am 28 years old, and until last month, I thought I knew what family meant. I was driving 2 hours to surprise my parents for their anniversary gifts, carefully wrapped in the back seat. When I arrived, I saw cars filling the driveway. Through the window, I glimpsed something that stopped me cold. My entire family gathered around the dining table, celebrating without me. I had no idea that night would shatter the image I had of my family forever. Before I share what happened when I walked through that door, drop a comment telling me where you are watching from, hit the like button, and subscribe if you want to hear more stories about family relationships and how to survive when they break your heart. Growing up in Riverdale, a small town where everyone knows your business, I always believed we were the perfect family. My parents, Margaret and Daniel Wilson, seemed to have the kind of marriage other kids envied. My older brother James' younger sister Sophia and I completed what appeared to be a picture-perfect American family. Our house was the gathering place for holidays, the yard where neighborhood kids played until streetlights came on. Dad coached Little League while Mom volunteered at the school library. We had traditions that felt sacred: Sunday dinners where electronics were banned, summer camping trips to Lake Clearwater, and holiday rituals that remained unchanged year after year. I can still picture our living room during Christmas, the pine tree touching the ceiling ornaments we had made in elementary school, hanging proudly despite their amateur craftsmanship. Dad reading The Night Before Christmas, while Mom made hot chocolate with the tiny marshmallows we all fought over. These are the memories I carried with me, the foundation I thought was unshakable. When I decided to attend college 2 hours away in the city, my parents were supportive, if a bit surprised. They had always assumed we would all stay close to home. James had followed the expected path, attending community college, and now working at the same insurance company as Dad. Sophia was finishing high school and talking about the nursing program at the local hospital where Mom had worked for 20 years. I was the outlier with dreams of becoming a graphic designer, chasing opportunities that simply did not exist in Riverdale. The city offered internships, connections, and a creative community I desperately craved. Still, I promised my family distance would not change anything important. For 4 years, I drove home monthly. I called twice a week, sent birthday cards with inside jokes, and spent every major holiday back in Riverdale. After graduation, when I accepted a position at a design agency in the city, the pattern continued. I might have lived 2 hours away, but I believed my presence in family life remained constant. 3 weeks ago, when I realized my parents' 30-year anniversary was approaching, I immediately began planning. This milestone deserved something special, not just a card sent in the mail or a phone call. I spent evenings after work hunting down the perfect gifts: a restoration of their wedding photo that had been damaged in a basement flood 5 years ago, and a custom necklace for Mom with 3 stones representing each of their children, matched with cufflinks for Dad bearing the same symbolic design. I scheduled time off work, arranged for my neighbor to water my plants, and packed overnight bags. The plan was to arrive Friday evening, surprise them with dinner and gifts, then spend the weekend celebrating. I imagined their faces lighting up when they opened the presents, pictured the stories we would share around the dinner table, the laughter that would fill that house like it always had. Looking back, I should have noticed the warning signs. Over the past 6 months, subtle changes had occurred in our communication. Mom stopped calling as frequently, our conversations became shorter, more surface level. Dad, who used to leave rambling voicemails about neighborhood gossip or projects around the house, now sent brief texts or let Mom handle the communication entirely. James rarely answered my calls, claiming he was busy with his new promotion. When we did speak, he seemed distracted, ending conversations abruptly. Sophia, typically the family gossip pipeline, became vague when I asked about weekend plans or family news. I dismissed these changes as everyone being busy with their own lives, never imagining there was an intentional pattern forming. When I called 2 weeks before the anniversary to subtly confirm my parents would be home that weekend, Mom sounded strange, almost nervous. She quickly assured me they had no special plans, just a quiet night at home. Something in her voice should have alerted me, but I was too excited about my surprise to notice the hesitation, the slight quiver that indicated she was not telling the whole truth. The weekend before my trip, I called Sophia to ensure she would keep my visit a secret. She seemed uncomfortable changing the subject repeatedly. When I pressed her, she finally mumbled something about not being sure of her own plans that weekend. Again, I missed the warning. My sister, who had never had plans that did not revolve around our small town social circle, was suddenly non-committal about a family anniversary. These were the breadcrumbs leading to what would become the most painful revelation of my adult life, but I was too caught up in my own narrative of family closeness to follow them to their logical conclusion. Now I understand why my calls went to voicemail more frequently, why holiday visits felt increasingly strained, why conversations seemed to halt when I entered rooms. The truth was forming in plain sight, but my belief in our unbreakable bond blinded me to the reality that was waiting at the end of my 2-hour drive. The day of the anniversary, I left work early, my car loaded with gifts, overnight bag, and a bottle of champagne chilling in a special travel cooler. The drive was familiar, every landmark triggering memories from childhood through college years. The old movie theater where we saw summer blockbusters. The ice cream shop Dad would take us to after softball games, win or lose. The lookout point where I had my first kiss, a detail my parents never knew, but part of the landscape of my history in this place. I sang along to playlists, rehearsed the moment of surprise in my mind, and felt a building excitement as highway gave way to county roads, then to the familiar streets of Riverdale. When I turned onto Maple Street, where my parents had lived for 35 years, I was smiling so hard my cheeks hurt. That smile froze on my face when I approached the house. The driveway, which normally held just my parents' 2 cars, was filled with vehicles. I recognized my Uncle Robert's pickup truck, my Aunt Patty's minivan, my cousin Michael's sports car. The street had additional cars parked along it, more than would be there for a casual visit. I slowed to a crawl, confusion replacing excitement. Had Mom and Dad planned something after all? Perhaps a small family celebration for their anniversary. But why had no one mentioned it to me? Parking across the street. I sat for a moment trying to make sense of the scene. That is when I looked toward the house and saw them through the dining room window. The large table where we had shared thousands of meals was extended to its full-length chairs crowded around it. I could see my father standing at the head raising a glass, my mother beside him beaming. James and Sophia, aunts, uncles, cousins, I had not seen in months, all dressed nicely, all raising glasses in a toast. The table was decorated with flowers, candles, and a banner I could not quite read from this distance. The scene was unmistakable, a celebration, a significant one judging by the attendance and setup. A celebration I knew nothing about, a family gathering to which I had not been invited. My heart began pounding so hard I could feel it in my fingertips. Maybe there was a misunderstanding. Maybe my surprise visit had coincidentally fallen on the same day as a surprise party someone else had planned. Maybe my invitation had been lost, my calls about this specific weekend misinterpreted. I sat frozen, watching my family laugh and talk, completely unaware of my presence outside. Should I drive away? Pretend I had never seen this, never know why I had been excluded? Or should I walk up to that door and demand an explanation? The gifts in my back seat made the decision for me. I had driven 2 hours, spent weeks planning this surprise. At minimum, I deserved to understand what was happening. Taking a deep breath, I grabbed the gift bags from the back seat and approached the front door, my legs feeling increasingly unstable with each step. The sound of the doorbell seemed abnormally loud, cutting through my racing thoughts. I waited, clutching the gift bags with white knuckles, hearing the sudden hush of conversation inside, then footsteps approaching. When my father opened the door, his face went through a series of expressions so quickly it would have been comical under different circumstances. Surprise, confusion, alarm, and finally a forced smile that did not reach his eyes. "Nadia," he said, his voice higher than normal. "What are you doing here?" Before I could answer, he seemed to realize how unwelcoming that sounded and stepped back, opening the door wider. "I mean, what a surprise! Come in, come in." I stepped into the entryway, the familiar smell of my mother's roast beef and apple pie hitting me with a wave of nostalgia, immediately soured by the circumstance. From the dining room, faces turned toward me, conversation stopping abruptly. My mother stood frozen halfway between the kitchen and dining room, holding a serving dish, her eyes wide. "Look who showed up, everyone," my father announced with forced cheerfulness. "Nadia is here." The responses were a chorus of awkward greetings. My Aunt Laura, my mother's sister, was the first to approach me. "Oh, what a surprise," She said the exact phrase my father had used as if they were reading from a script titled, How to Greet Someone Who Was Not Invited. My mother finally moved, setting down the dish and coming to give me a stiff hug. We did not expect you, she said, another variation of the same unwelcoming theme. Her body was tense against mine, nothing like the warm embraces I remembered from childhood. Looking past her, I saw the dining room clearly now. The banner read, Happy 30th Anniversary, Margaret and Daniel. The table was set with the good china, the special occasion silverware crystal glasses I had not seen since my cousin's wedding. This was not a spontaneous gathering. This was a planned, formal celebration for my parents' anniversary. My brother James avoided eye contact entirely suddenly, very interested in refilling his wine glass. Sophia at least had the decency to look guilty, her eyes meeting mine briefly before she looked down at her plate. We are just having a small dinner for our anniversary, my mother said, gesturing toward the table loaded with food and surrounded by at least 15 family members. Nothing special. Let me get you a plate. The room felt like it was spinning. A small dinner. With extended family members I had not seen in over a year, but without their own daughter. Nothing special. With decorations, formal table settings, and everyone dressed for the occasion. I followed my mother to the table in a daze, clutching my gift bags like lifelines. Someone, I think it was my cousin Rachel, scooted over to make room, bringing an extra chair from the living room. I sat placing the gifts beside my feet, feeling like an intruder at a party in my own family home. We would have told you, my Aunt Patty said from across the table, not quite meeting my eyes. But it all came together last minute. Another lie transparent as glass. Nothing about this elaborate setup had been last minute. Conversation resumed awkwardly, my relatives asking surface questions about my job, my apartment, my city life. Each inquiry felt like an obligation, not genuine interest. I answered mechanically while trying to process what was happening. Between forced smiles, I caught whispered exchanges. My Uncle Robert leaning toward my father. Did not know she was coming. My cousin Sarah to her mother. This is uncomfortable. My brother to my sister. I told you we should have just told her. My mother kept repeating variations of, we did not expect you, whenever she passed behind my chair, as if reminding not just me, but everyone present, that my appearance was unplanned, unwanted. The message was clear. I did not belong in this picture of family celebration. I picked at my food appetite, gone fighting back tears that threatened to expose how deeply wounded I felt. These people had known me my entire life. How could they sit here passing dishes, making small talk, pretending this was normal? Eventually, as dessert was served, the initial shock began to transform into anger. I pulled my brother aside as he headed to the kitchen for coffee. What is going on, James? I asked quietly. Why was I not invited to our parents' anniversary dinner? His response was defensive immediately. It is not a big deal, Nadia. Just a simple family dinner. I am family, I replied, my voice cracking despite my effort to keep it steady. At least I thought I was. He sighed, looking annoyed rather than sympathetic. You are always so dramatic. You live 2 hours away. Nobody expected you to drive all this way for dinner. But everybody else is here, I pointed out. Aunt Laura drove 3 hours from Hartfield. Cousin Michael flew in from Chicago. How is that different? James shifted uncomfortably. Look, it just did not make sense to... You know what? Ask Mom. I do not want to get into this now. He walked away, leaving me more confused and hurt than before. My sister was equally unhelpful when I cornered her in the hallway, her excuse so flimsy it would have collapsed under a whisper. We thought you would be busy, she mumbled, looking at the floor. You always talk about your work deadlines and city friends. I endured the remainder of the dinner, watching the family I thought I knew laugh and share stories, occasionally glancing my way with discomfort, before returning to their collective bubble. When relatives began gathering coats and saying goodbyes, I helped clear plates mechanically, waiting until the house emptied of extended family before confronting my parents. I found them in the kitchen, my mother washing dishes, my father drying. The domestic scene was so normal, so contrary to the emotional chaos inside me, that for a moment I wondered if I had imagined the entire evening. Can we talk about what just happened? I asked, my voice calmer than I felt. My mother continued scrubbing a pan, not looking up. What do you mean? The casual dismissal pushed me closer to the edge. Mom, why was I not invited to your anniversary dinner? Why did no one tell me this was happening? Dad looked uncomfortable, glancing at Mom as if waiting for her to answer. His silence was its own kind of betrayal. It was just a small gathering. She said the same phrase she had used earlier, despite all evidence to the contrary. Small. Everyone was here. Literally every member of our family except me. Mom finally looked up, irritation flashing across her face. Nadia, you live 2 hours away. We did not expect you to come all this way for dinner. I would have come if I had known, I said, gesturing to the gift bags I had placed on the counter. In fact, I did come. I took time off work. I drove here specifically for your anniversary. My mother's expression hardened. Well, nobody asked you to do that. You should have called first. The coldness in her voice was unfamiliar, shocking. This was not the mother who had held me through childhood fevers, who had cried when I left for college, who had always made me feel like coming home was the most natural thing in the world. So, I need an invitation now to celebrate my own parents' anniversary. That is when she said it, the words that would echo in my mind for weeks afterward. It is just a family dinner, Nadia. Get over it. Just a family dinner. Get over it. Each word was a knife, precise and cutting. But it was the implication that gutted me completely. Family dinner. But I was not family. Not really. Not anymore. If it is a family dinner, I said slowly, then why was I, your daughter, not included in the family? Mom slapped the dishcloth down. You chose to leave Nadia. You chose your fancy city job and your new life. You are never here. I am here for every holiday. I call every week. I drive home once a month. It is not the same, she snapped. The rest of us are here building our lives together. You just drop in when it is convenient. Dad remained silent, his tacit agreement more painful than if he had yelled. This was not a misunderstanding. This was a deliberate exclusion, and both my parents were complicit. James walked into the kitchen, then his timing impeccable as always for maximizing drama. What is going on? Your sister is upset she was not invited to dinner, Mom said dismissively. James sighed dramatically. I told you she would make this about herself. The casual cruelty stunned me. Make this about myself. It is your parents' anniversary dinner and I am their daughter. How is it making it about myself to wonder why I was excluded? Because, James said with the condescending tone he had perfected since childhood, not everything revolves around your schedule and convenience. We have been having family dinners every month for the past year. You have not been at any of them. A year. They had been gathering monthly for a year. No one had told me. No one had invited me. 12 family dinners I knew nothing about. Sophia appeared in the doorway, her expression torn between loyalty to our parents and discomfort with the situation. Nadia, it is not like we did not want you there. It is just, well, it got complicated trying to plan around when you might be able to come. So you stopped trying entirely? No one even mentioned these dinners to me. Not once. The silence that followed confirmed what I already knew. This had been intentional. A systematic removal of me from family events, from their conception of what family meant now. I looked at the gift bags I had placed on the counter, suddenly feeling foolish for the hours spent selecting perfect presents for the caretaken, wrapping them, for the excitement I had felt imagining their reactions. Without a word, I grabbed the bags and headed toward the door. No one followed me. No one called after me. The absence of their footsteps behind me, the silence as I opened the front door, was the final confirmation of everything I feared. In the car, I placed the gifts on the passenger seat and started the engine with shaking hands. Through the window, I could see them in the kitchen doorway watching me leave. They did not wave. They did not come after me. They simply watched, 3 figures growing smaller in my rearview mirror, along with everything I thought I knew about belonging. I could not face the 2-hour drive home that night. My vision was blurred with tears, my mind racing too fast to focus on the road. I checked into the Riverdale Inn, a small hotel on the edge of town, where I knew no one would look for me, though I doubted anyone would try. The room was generic, impersonal, a fitting backdrop for the hollowness I felt. Sitting on the edge of the bed, I finally allowed myself to fall apart completely. Sobs racked my body, grief pouring out for the family. I thought I had the belonging I had taken for granted, the identity that had been pulled out from under me like a tablecloth in a magic trick, leaving everything shattered. My phone lit up around midnight. Sophia. I let it ring 4 times before answering. Nadia. Where are you? Are you okay? Her voice was pitched higher than normal, nervous. No, I am not okay, I answered honestly. I just found out my family has been excluding me from gatherings for a year, that I am apparently not considered part of the family anymore. So no, I am not okay. She sighed. You are being dramatic. Of course you are family. It is just well different with you living away. James lives in his own house. Dad's sister lives 3 states away. Cousin Michael lives in Chicago. They were all there tonight. That is different, she insisted, though she could not articulate how. Look, Mom and Dad are upset you left like that. Are they upset enough to call me themselves? Her silence answered that question. They feel like you overreacted. It was supposed to be a nice evening and you made it all tense. The gaslighting was so blatant, it would have been funny if it had not been so painful. I made it tense by showing up uninvited to my own parents' anniversary celebration. That is an interesting perspective. You know what I mean? She mumbled. They miss the way things used to be, before you moved away. I miss that too, I said quietly. But I did not think moving 2 hours away for a career opportunity meant I was exiling myself from the family. The conversation cycled in the same pattern, her defending our parents, me pointing out the absurdity of the situation, neither of us reaching understanding. We hung up with nothing resolved. Minutes later, a text from James, way to ruin Mom and Dad's anniversary, drama queen as usual. No call from my parents. I slept fitfully, waking to swollen eyes and a headache that matched the ache in my chest. After a shower that did little to revive me, I made a decision. I would not leave things like this. I deserved answers, explanations, some attempt at resolution. I drove back to my parents' house mid-morning, rehearsing what I would say, determined to remain calm regardless of their response. My mother opened the door with an expression that suggested she had been expecting me but was not particularly happy about it. Come in, she said flatly. Your father is in the living room. I followed her, noticing the dining room had been returned to normal, all evidence of the celebration erased as if it had never happened. My father sat in his recliner, newspaper in hand, looking up briefly when I entered. You did not need to come back, Mom said, taking a seat on the couch. I think you overreacted last night. No greeting, no acknowledgement of my feelings, straight to dismissal. I did not overreact, I said, keeping my voice steady. I discovered my family has been deliberately excluding me from gatherings for a year. That hurts, Mom. Dad lowered his newspaper. You are being dramatic, Nadia. Always have been. We did not exclude you. We just did not think you would want to drive all this way for dinner. Did you ask me? Did you ever once invite me to any of these monthly dinners? They exchanged glances but did not answer. And what about your anniversary dinner specifically? That is a milestone, 30 years. Did it not occur to you that I might want to be part of celebrating that? Mom sighed heavily. You have your own busy life in the city. We told the family you were too busy with your career to come to these gatherings. Another revelation that hit like a physical blow. Not only had they excluded me, but they had created a narrative for the extended family that I was the one choosing not to participate, that I had prioritized work over family. That is not true, I said, voice cracking. I have never been too busy for important family events. You just decided that for me. Looking around, I noticed my gift bags on the side table still wrapped untouched since I had left them the night before. They had not even been curious enough to open them. I brought anniversary presents, I said, nodding toward the bags. I took time off work. I planned this trip weeks ago specifically to celebrate with you. That is nice, Mom said with a dismissive wave, not making any move toward the gifts. But you should have called first. The conversation deteriorated from there. Each attempt to explain my hurt was met with deflection or dismissal. I learned that besides the monthly dinners, there had been other events I knew nothing about: my grandfather's 80th birthday celebration, my cousin's baby shower, a family vacation to the lake house last summer. "We did not want to burden you," Dad said, as if excluding me from family memories was a favor. James arrived midway through our conversation, clearly having been texted by one of our parents. His presence only made things worse. "The truth is," he said after listening to the circular argument for several minutes, "we enjoy these gatherings more without the drama you always bring." "What drama?" I asked, genuinely confused. "When have I ever caused drama at family events?" "You always have to be different," he said with a sneer. "College in the city instead of staying local. That artsy job instead of something practical. Always talking about your city friends and their progressive ideas." So that was it. My crime was not conforming to their expectations, daring to build a life that looked different from the one they had imagined for me. Sophia arrived soon after completing our family gathering in the most painful way possible. Her contribution to the conversation was perhaps the most honest. "Mom and Dad feel like you abandoned us," she said quietly. "Like you chose your career over family. They took it personally when you moved away." "I moved 2 hours away, not 2 continents," I replied. "I call, I visit. I have never missed a holiday or birthday." "But you are not here," Mom interjected. "Not for Sunday dinners, or when the water heater broke, or when your father had that minor surgery. James and Sophia were here to help." "You never told me about Dad's surgery," I said, looking at my father in shock. "When was this?" "6 months ago," he mumbled. "Nothing serious. Did not want to worry you. Or give me the chance to be here," I added. The conversation reached its climax when my mother finally laid out her ultimatum. "If you want to be part of this family in the same way as James and Sophia, you need to move back to Riverdale. Your career is not more important than family." My father nodded in agreement. "That graphic design stuff, you could do that anywhere. The community college is always looking for art teachers." The suggestion that I should abandon the career I had worked so hard to build, the life I had created, in order to earn back my place in the family, was the final revelation. They did not respect my choices. They did not value my dreams. To them, family meant physical proximity and conformity, not love and support regardless of distance. The final blow came when Sophia, trying to show me something on her phone, accidentally opened their family group chat. I caught a glimpse of dozens of messages, photos from gatherings, inside jokes, plans for events I had never heard about, a digital record of my systematic exclusion. "You have a family group chat?" I asked, though the evidence was right in front of me. Sophia looked guilty. "Just for coordinating local stuff." "Local stuff that happens to include our aunt from 3 states away and cousin from Chicago when they visit." I noted, seeing their names in the participant list. There was no coming back from this revelation. This was not one dinner. This was a deliberate reconstruction of family that placed me firmly on the outside, a decision that had been made collectively and maintained intentionally over time. I left my parents' house for the second time, but now with clarity instead of confusion. The pain was still acute, but at least I understood its source. This was not my failure to maintain connection. This was their choice to sever it, because I had dared to follow a different path. The gifts remained unopened on the side table as I walked out the door. Returning to my apartment in the city felt like emerging from a fever dream into reality. The familiar surroundings should have been comforting, but instead they seemed to mock me with their solitude. Every corner of my space represented the choice my family had decided was unforgivable: my decision to build a life beyond the boundaries of our hometown. For weeks I moved through my days mechanically. Work provided distraction during business hours, but evenings stretched endlessly. I sent tentative texts to my siblings that went unanswered or received minimal responses. My parents did not contact me at all. The silence from my family created a void that seemed to expand each day. I began journaling, trying to process the betrayal, pouring my confusion and hurt onto pages that quickly filled with questions without answers. How long had they been planning to phase me out? Had they ever been proud of me for pursuing my dreams? Had our closeness always been conditional on my physical proximity? My friend Alicia was the first to notice my withdrawal. We had been scheduled to meet for our regular Saturday brunch, an appointment I had forgotten entirely until she texted from outside my building. "You look terrible," she said bluntly when I opened the door in pajamas at noon. "What is going on?" The story poured out of me in fragmented pieces as she made coffee and toast, listening without interruption. When I finished, she sat across from me at my small kitchen table, her expression a mixture of sympathy and anger on my behalf. "Nadia, that is not normal," she said firmly. "Families do not exclude members because they moved 2 hours away for a job opportunity. That is controlling behavior masked as family values." Her perspective was like cold water, shocking but clarifying. I had been so deep in my family dynamics that I had lost sight of how dysfunctional they actually were. "Maybe I should have visited more often," I said weakly. "Called more." Alicia shook her head. "You said you call weekly and visit monthly. That is more than most adults with busy careers manage. This is not about your effort. This is about their expectations and control." At her insistence, I scheduled an appointment with a therapist the following week. Dr. Marshall listened to my story with professional detachment that somehow made it easier to tell. When I finished, she asked questions that illuminated patterns I had never noticed. "Has your family always had difficulty accepting members who choose different paths?" I thought immediately of my Aunt Elaine, my mother's younger sister who had moved to California for college and never returned. The family spoke of her rarely, and when they did, it was with disapproval thinly veiled as concern. "My mother's sister," I said slowly. "She moved away 20 years ago. They barely mention her." "And how do they treat family members who stay close, who follow more expected paths? James, the golden child, working at Dad's insurance company. Sophia studying nursing like Mom. Cousins who married young, bought houses in neighboring towns, had children right away. All celebrated their choices, reinforced with approval and inclusion." Over several sessions, Dr. Marshall helped me understand the toxic family patterns that had been invisible to me growing up. The conditional love, the expectation of conformity, the punishment through exclusion when those expectations were not met. "You have not actually lost your family recently," she told me gently. "You are just now seeing the conditions that were always attached to your membership." This realization was both painful and liberating. The family I thought I had might never have existed the way I imagined. The unconditional love and support I believed was my birthright had always been contingent on compliance with unspoken rules. While processing these insights, evidence of ongoing family gatherings continued to appear on social media. A post from my cousin tagged at my parents' house for a barbecue. A photo of James, Sophia, and my parents at a restaurant celebrating my father's birthday, an event I had not been told about. Each discovery renewed the pain, confirmation that the exclusion was ongoing, deliberate. My mother's passive-aggressive comments began appearing on my Instagram posts. Under a photo of my work setup. "Must be nice to have such a fancy job while the rest of us work regular hours." On a picture of brunch with Alicia. "Glad you have time for friends. Family misses you." Each comment designed to provoke guilt while maintaining the narrative that my absence was my choice, not their exclusion. The breaking point came when Sophia called on a Tuesday evening in May. I answered, hopefully, part of me still craving reconnection despite everything. "Mom and Dad are renewing their vows next month for their anniversary," she said without preamble. "Just wanted to let you know." Not an invitation. Just information. I waited for her to continue to ask if I would attend to provide details. The silence stretched uncomfortably. "Are you inviting me to this event?" I finally asked directly. Her hesitation was telling. "Well, I think you might want to come, if you are not busy with work and everything." Again, the narrative that my career was an obstacle I placed before family, not a legitimate part of my life they should support. "When exactly is it happening?" "Where?" "June 15th, at Riverside Gardens where they got married. 4 p.m. ceremony, dinner after at the Lakeside restaurant. All planned, all decided. No input sought from their daughter, not even the courtesy of a direct invitation." I swallowed hard. "Thanks for letting me know." I thought the conversation was ending when she added almost as an afterthought, "Oh, and Mom wanted to ask if you could design the invitations. She knows you are good at that stuff and wants to save on printing costs." The request hit me like a slap. I was not important enough to be properly invited to the event, but my professional skills were still valuable enough to exploit. They wanted my contribution without my presence, my talents without my person. Sophia, do you realize what you are asking? Mom has not spoken to me since I discovered I was deliberately excluded from their anniversary dinner. Dad has not called once. Neither of them have acknowledged how hurtful that was. And now they want me to design invitations for a vow renewal I had to ask if I am even invited to. You are making this a bigger deal than it is, she said, the family refrain I had heard my entire life whenever I expressed feelings that made them uncomfortable. Mom just thought since you do this for a living. For a living, I repeated. Meaning I get paid for it. It is my profession, not a hobby I do for free, especially for people who have made it clear I am not a priority. So you will not do it. I will not do it, and please tell Mom that if she wants to discuss the vow renewal with me, she can call me directly. My mother did call 10 minutes after I hung up with Sophia. Not to apologize, not to acknowledge the hurt, but to express disappointment that I would not design her invitations. This is important to me and your father, she said, as if that alone should compel my compliance. I thought you would want to be part of it. Like I was part of your anniversary dinner, I could not help asking. Are you still upset about that? It was just dinner, Nadia. You need to get over it. Those words again. The dismissal of my feelings, the minimization of their actions, the gaslighting that suggested my hurt was an overreaction rather than a proportionate response to exclusion. It was not just dinner, I said, finding my voice stronger than expected. It was a deliberate choice to exclude me from a family celebration. One of many such choices you and Dad have been making for at least a year. You have systematically pushed me out of this family because I chose to pursue my career. That is not true, she protested. You are the one who left. I moved 2 hours away, Mom. I did not abandon you. I did not stop calling or visiting. I did not miss holidays or birthdays. You chose to redefine family in a way that excluded me. The conversation devolved quickly after that. My mother's defensive anger. My father taking the phone to suggest I needed to grow up and stop being so sensitive. Their unified front against my legitimate hurt. When I hung up, my phone immediately buzzed with a voicemail from James, no doubt having been informed of the conversation by my parents. His message was predictably angry, blaming me for upsetting our parents, accusing me of trying to split the family apart. The irony of that accusation would have been laughable if it had not been so painful. That night, staring at the ceiling of my bedroom, I reached a realization that felt like both loss and liberation. This pattern would never change if I kept participating in it. My parents would continue to exclude me, then blame me for the exclusion. My siblings would continue to enable the dynamic. And I would continue to be hurt by people who saw my pain as an inconvenience, rather than a sign they had caused harm. The family I had been fighting to remain part of did not actually exist. What existed was a system of control disguised as closeness of conformity, presented as care. And I had a choice whether to keep seeking approval from people who had made it conditional on surrendering my authentic self. The week following my conversation with my parents about their vow renewal became a turning point. I spent several sessions with Dr. Marshall processing what had happened and considering how to move forward. You cannot change their behavior, she told me, but you can change how you respond to it. What boundaries would protect your emotional well-being while leaving the door open for healthier interaction if they ever become capable of it? This question guided my reflection. I did not want to cut off my family entirely, but I needed to stop the cycle of hurt that came from expecting inclusion they were unwilling to offer. With Dr. Marshall's guidance, I drafted an email to my entire family, including my parents, siblings, and the aunts, uncles, and cousins who had been present at the anniversary dinner. It took 3 days and numerous revisions to find language that was honest, without being accusatory, vulnerable without seeking validation. I am writing to share my feelings about recent family events and to establish some boundaries going forward. The email began. When I discovered I had been systematically excluded from family gatherings over the past year, including the recent anniversary dinner for Mom and Dad, I was deeply hurt. This was not about one missed invitation, but about a pattern that made me feel I am no longer considered part of our family because I chose to pursue my career in the city. I continued explaining how I had always valued our family connection, how I had made consistent efforts to maintain it despite distance, and how devastating it was to learn those efforts were deemed insufficient. I am not writing to blame anyone or demand changes, I assured them. I recognize that each person has the right to decide who they include in their celebrations. I am writing to let you know how your choices have affected me and to establish how I will protect myself going forward. The boundaries I outlined were simple but firm. I would no longer drive to Riverdale unless specifically invited to an event. I would not call multiple times if my calls went unreturned. I would prioritize relationships with family members who demonstrated reciprocal effort and respect. My door remains open for anyone who wishes to visit me in the city, I concluded. My life here is not a rejection of family, but an embrace of my authentic self. I hope someday we can celebrate both our shared roots and our individual journeys. I sent the email before I could second-guess myself, then turned off my phone and went for a long walk through the city park. When I returned home and checked my messages, the responses were predictably mixed. My mother had replied with a single line, "I think you are overreacting, but you need to do what you think is best." My father had not responded at all. James had sent an angry paragraph accusing me of trying to make our parents feel guilty and split the family apart again. Sophia's response was tearful and conflicted, expressing both understanding of my hurt and loyalty to our parents' narrative. The surprise came from extended family members. My Aunt Laura wrote a thoughtful reply acknowledging she had sensed something was wrong at the dinner but had not known the full context. "I should have reached out to you directly," she admitted. "Family dynamics are complicated, but exclusion is never the answer." My cousin Rachel, who I had always been close with growing up, sent a private message expressing shock at learning I had never been invited to the monthly gatherings. "I was told you were always too busy with your city life," she wrote. "I should have questioned that narrative." Most unexpected was a long email from my Aunt Elaine, the California aunt I barely knew, who had apparently been included in the family email by one of my cousins. "What you are experiencing now I lived through 20 years ago," she wrote. "The punishment for choosing a different path is exclusion presented as your choice rather than theirs. It took me years to understand this was not my failure, but their limitation." Her words resonated deeply, offering validation from someone who had walked this path before me. We arranged a video call for the following weekend, the beginning of a connection with family on my own terms outside the controlled narrative my parents had constructed. 2 weeks after sending the email, Sophia asked to meet for coffee halfway between our homes. I agreed, cautiously optimistic about reconnecting with my sister outside our parents' influence. The cafe was neutral territory, a place with no family history attached. Sophia looked nervous when she arrived, fidgeting with her coffee cup. "I am not supposed to be here," she admitted after awkward small talk. "Mom and Dad were upset about your email. They said we should present a united front by not responding." "But you are responding," I noted. "You are here." She nodded slowly. "I keep thinking about what you wrote about being excluded. The thing is, Nadia, it is true. We did start having these gatherings without telling you. And when I asked why you were not invited, Mom always said, 'She is busy with her new life,' or 'She would not drive all this way just for dinner.' Did you ever suggest calling to ask me?" "Once," she said quietly. "Dad said if you wanted to be involved, you would move back to Riverdale. That your choice to stay in the city was a choice against family." The confirmation of what I had suspected was both painful and validating. Their exclusion had been deliberate, a punishment for my independence. "Do you believe that," I asked, "that my living here means I do not value family?" Sophia hesitated. "I used to. It was easier to believe you were choosing your career over us than to think our parents were being unfair. But lately, I have been wondering if maybe they are wrong. If maybe family should be about supporting each other's choices, not controlling them." It was a small crack in the family narrative, but significant coming from my sister, who had always aligned with our parents. We talked for hours more honestly than we had in years. She shared her own frustrations with our parents, Expectations, her doubts about the nursing program she had entered to please Mom, her envy of my courage to chart my own course. By the time we said goodbye, something had shifted between us. The bond was tentative, fragile but real, in a way it had not been when mediated through our parents' approval. I made the decision not to attend the vow renewal. Instead, I booked a weekend at a lakeside cabin with Alicia and 2 other friends. While my parents renewed their commitment to each other with the family members they had chosen to include, I invested in relationships based on mutual respect and genuine care. I posted photos of my weekend on social media, hiking trails, lakeside sunset, laughter around a campfire. Not to hurt my family, but to celebrate the life I was building on my own terms. The response was unexpected. Messages from cousins asking about the location for future trips, comments from friends back in Riverdale expressing envy of my freedom. And most surprisingly, a private message from my Aunt Patty, who had been at the anniversary dinner. "Your weekend looks wonderful. I realize now we have not made enough effort to understand your life in the city. If the invitation to visit is still open, your Uncle Robert and I would love to see where you live and what you do there." It was a small opening, but a meaningful one. Family members reaching past my parents' gatekeeping to connect with me directly, recognizing me as an individual with my own life worth knowing, not just a wayward daughter who had failed to conform. The final confrontation with my mother came a week after the vow renewal. She called ostensibly to tell me the event had gone well, but her real purpose quickly became clear. "Your Aunt Patty mentioned she is planning to visit you," she said, her disapproval evident. "I told her she should wait until you decide to come home for a proper visit." "Mom, I am home," I said firmly. "This is my home now, and Aunt Patty is welcome here any time." "This is not your home," she insisted. "Riverdale is your home. Your family is here." "My family is wherever people who love me are. That includes some people in Riverdale and some people here." Her frustration was palpable even through the phone. "I do not understand why you did not come to the vow renewal. It was important to your father and me." "I was not properly invited," I reminded her. "Sophia mentioned it existed and suggested I might want to come if I was not busy. That is not an invitation, Mom. That is an afterthought." "You are being too sensitive," she said. "You know you are welcome any time." "Do I?" I challenged. "Because your actions for the past year have said exactly the opposite." The conversation circled familiar territory until she finally asked the question that had apparently been bothering her. "Why will you not just move back to Riverdale? Your life would be so much easier. You would be part of things again." "I will not be where I am not truly wanted," I said simply. "And I will not abandon the life I have built, the career I love, to earn conditional acceptance." Her response was shocking in its honesty. "You have always been different, Nadia. Difficult, even as a child. Always questioning, always wanting more than what was right in front of you. The rest of us are happy here. Why could not you be?" In that moment, I understood this had never been about moving away. It had been about who I fundamentally was, someone who questioned, who dreamed beyond boundaries, who could not confine herself to the narrow definition of life my parents found acceptable. The realization was liberating. This rejection was not something I had earned through insufficient effort or love. It was a response to my authentic self, the person I had always been. And no amount of conformity, no sacrifice of my dreams or identity would ever truly earn their unconditional acceptance. "I am different," I agreed. "And that is not something I need to apologize for or change. It is something I am learning to celebrate." 1 year has passed since that night I stood on my parents' doorstep, gifts in hand, discovering I had been systematically removed from my family's definition of family. The anniversary brings reflection not just on what was lost, but on what has been found in its absence. The initial months of limited contact were excruciating. Holidays approached with new questions. Where would I go? Who would I celebrate with? How would I create meaning without the traditions that had defined my life? Grief came in waves for the family. I thought I had the unconditional love I had believed was my birthright. Dr. Marshall guided me through the stages: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and finally a tentative acceptance. Not of the exclusion itself, but of the reality that I could not change my family's choices, only my response to them. Therapy revealed patterns I had never noticed growing up. How my questioning nature had always been labeled as difficult. How my dreams beyond Riverdale had been treated as rejection rather than growth. How love had always been tied to compliance belonging to conformity. Understanding these dynamics did not erase the pain, but it helped me contextualize it. This was not my failure. It was a system designed to maintain control by punishing independence. As the rawness of betrayal faded, I began investing deeply in relationships that nourished rather than depleted me. Alicia became not just a friend, but chosen family, including me in her parents' Thanksgiving gathering where I was welcomed without condition. My apartment, once a symbol of separation from family, transformed into a sanctuary of self-expression. I repainted walls, hung art that spoke to my soul, created a space that reflected who I was, rather than who my parents thought I should be. Professionally, the energy previously spent seeking family approval redirected into my career. A promotion followed my design work, recognized with an industry award opportunities opening that would never have been possible had I returned to Riverdale as my parents demanded. My relationship with Sophia has evolved into something tentative but genuine. She visits monthly now, slowly finding her own voice, questioning the family narratives in ways that would have been impossible a year ago. Last month, she confessed she is considering transferring from the nursing program to pursue teaching her true passion. The fear in her eyes when she shared this plan showed how powerful our parents' disapproval remains, but she is finding courage to resist it. James remains distant. Our occasional text exchanges civil but superficial. He is engaged now to a woman from Riverdale, settling deeper into the life path our parents approve of. Sometimes I wonder if his hostility toward my choices stems from his own unexplored dreams, but that is his journey to navigate, not mine. Extended family relationships have developed in unexpected ways. Aunt Patty and Uncle Robert did visit, spending a weekend exploring my city life with genuine curiosity. Cousin Rachel calls regularly, planning a move to a neighboring city for graduate school. My bond with Aunt Elaine has deepened through monthly video calls, connecting me to a branch of family history that had been systematically erased from our collective narrative. My parents maintain minimal contact. Birthday cards with gift cards enclosed but no personal messages. Christmas presents mailed rather than exchanged in person. Occasional calls that remain surface level, always ending with subtle suggestions that my life would be better if I returned to Riverdale. The most significant healing has come from a profound shift in perspective. My worth is no longer tied to family validation. My identity is not defined by their acceptance. The love I deserve is not contingent on geographic proximity or conformity to their expectations. Last month, I faced a test of my new boundaries when a friend's wedding brought me back to Riverdale for the first time since the vow renewal. I knew I might encounter my parents at the reception, the town being small enough that social circles inevitably overlap. When we did meet, their greeting was civil but cool. Mom commented on my new haircut with faint disapproval. Dad asked about my job with the implication that it was still a phase I would eventually outgrow. A year ago, these subtle rejections would have devastated me. Now I could recognize them as reflections of their limitations, not my value. I did not leave the reception early to avoid them. I did not shrink myself to earn their approval. I celebrated with the bride and groom, danced with old friends, enjoyed conversations with hometown acquaintances who expressed genuine interest in my city life. My parents' presence was just one element of the evening, not its defining feature. The drive back to the city afterward felt different from all the previous returns. Not an escape, not a retreat, but simply a journey home to the life I had built, the person I had become. For the first time, I did not cry at the city limits sign. I did not feel torn between worlds. I simply felt whole. This year has taught me that family exists in many forms. Some are connected by blood, others by choice. Some relationships nurture growth, others demand stagnation. The painful gift of exclusion was the freedom to discover which connections truly deserved my energy and investment. My parents may never change. They may always view my independence as rejection, my different path as betrayal. That is their limitation, not mine. I have stopped waiting for an apology that may never come, for understanding they may be incapable of offering. Instead, I focus on building a life rich with authentic connections. Last weekend, I hosted a dinner party in my apartment. Around my table sat friends who have become family, who show up not out of obligation, but choice, who celebrate my successes without feeling threatened, who offer support without demanding conformity. As we shared food and laughter, I realized something profound. I was no longer mourning what I had lost, because what I had found was so much more valuable. True family, it turns out, is not defined by shared DNA, but by shared respect. Not by obligation, but by choice. Not by control, but by freedom to be fully yourself and fully loved simultaneously. Blood makes you related, but love and respect make you family. Sometimes the most painful rejections lead to the most authentic connections, guiding us not away from family, but toward a more genuine understanding of what family should be. I am still learning, still healing, still discovering who I am outside the narrow role my parents assigned me. But for the first time in my adult life, I am not trying to earn my place at a table where I will never truly be welcome. I am building my own table-setting places for those who choose to be there and finding that it is more than enough. Have you ever experienced family rejection for following your own path? What helped you heal and find your people? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more content about family dynamics, healing, and creating chosen family. Thank you for witnessing my journey, and remember that your worth is never determined by those who cannot see it. You deserve to be truly seen and valued exactly as you are.